I'm going to try to speak a little bit louder because I guess some people can't hear me. I've also adjusted the audio inside my computer. So let's see. I hope that works. If you can't hear me, just send a note. Hey, John, need you a little bit louder. Can't hear it or something like that. Some balloon head, David something or other, sent me 8 emails with gigantic print with exclamation points that said louder, and he wrote it 8 times on each note. One, don't do that. And two, unless you're a 13-year-old girl writing in her diary about how somebody broke your heart, don't use exclamation points. Don't. Forget they're on your keyboard, unless you're copying verbatim from a statement and there was an exclamation point in it. I'm talking now to the writers. Everyone else feels free to use an exclamation point. This would make a great movie, this story. If you saw Dr. No, it's an old James Bond film. In the opening scenes, he walks by this painting in James Bond and he stops and he stares at it. Well, the painting in question is the Duke of Wellington. It was done by Francisco Goya. The painting was purchased by the British government in 1961 at auction, and they placed it in the National Gallery over in London. And it went on display August 2, 1961. 19 days later, it was stolen. It was later returned, and a fellow named Kempton Button confessed to the crime in 1965. Here, this is interesting. Button was a retired bus driver. He was also badly wounded in World War II. And for that, he earned £8 a week in 1961. In that year, Charles Reitzman, a rich American art collector who made all his money in the oil business, purchased the Goya painting of the Duke of Wellington for the sum of about then $390,000. And he planned to take it to the U.S. and put it on display. Well, the British government felt, well, it shouldn't leave this country. So they counteroffered 140,000 plus a little bit more, 140,000 pounds. So almost $500,000 for this thing. Well, Bunton is sitting at home and he's watching this, and he's outraged because his television license fee, something we don't have here, from his modest income was sizable. So unless he paid for his TV, which he couldn't afford, he'd have no TV. And then he looks at his government spending $500,000, a sizable amount in 1961, on a painting, and he just thinks, well, this is outrageous. So he went down to the National Gallery, God bless him. He had conversations with the guard, and he learned that the incredibly elaborate infrared sensor alarm system were turned off in the early morning so the cleaners could clean the work. The night before he stole the painting, Bunton loosened the window inside the men's room, and then the next morning, early before the sunrise, he used that to enter the building, the gallery again, and he walked over to the portrait and he ripped it off the wall and he exited through the bathroom window again. So police, detective, international investigators were sent in. All of them agreed this was, beyond a doubt, an expert art thief who did this. There was no doubt about it. This is some sort of a spectacular cat burglar, blah, blah, blah. Not an old guy who could barely walk. However, a letter was sent to the Reuters news agency asking for a donation of 140,000 pounds to a charity that he wanted invented to pour money into a fund to help poor people pay for licensing on TV. He said if he could get that, plus amnesty for stealing the painting, he'd have it returned. But so they took it to the police, and the police said, no, we're not taking this seriously. In 1965, 4 years had now gone by. Button, the bus driver, contacted a newspaper, and he told the reporter that the picture could be found in the lost and found bin at a nearby subway station near the newspaper. And there it was. 6 weeks later, the painting's back in the gallery. Mr. Button surrendered to the police. During the trial, the jury heard his story, and they were moved by it because it made sense. A retired guy should be able to have TV and not have to give up a meal to have it. So they found him guilty, but they found him guilty of stealing the frame to the painting and not the painting itself. That's fair because the frame was not returned. Button was sentenced to 3 months in prison, and that was suspended. Good for him, man. Good for him. Proud of him.